Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Suzanne Somers.
Hi there. Oh, hi. How are you? I'm looking around. I know so many of you. It feels like we're up at my house in Palm Springs. So, why would somebody care to read a book about my life with Alan? And I'm here to explain to you not only why I think you would enjoy reading the book about this relationship, this incredible relationship, but also, in order to care about somebody, you got to know where they came from. So I just need to give you a little background on Alan and I. He was born to Eastern European parents. They escaped Hitler, came to Canada. His father came by route of Texas because he had read about cowboys and wanted to be a Polish cowboy in Texas. And didn't work out very well there because he didn't speak the language, and the twang was sort of hard to decipher when you come from Poland. He got to Canada and met his mother, and they opened a boarding house. His mother was one of these incredible women. And Alan spent his childhood being harassed by anti-Semites and being beat up every day until ultimately at 8 years old he was hung by a rope in a, always makes me emotional to talk about it, but I've learned to forgive those bullies. They hung him by a rope at 8 years old and left to die, and an angel in the form of an old man heard the whimpering of this child and cut him down. That shapes you. I spent my childhood, I was born to Irish Catholic parents. My father was a violent, raging alcoholic. I've written a couple of books about him. And by the way, I've found complete forgiveness for him also, because that's the important key in life, is to forgive. Because out of every negative is the opportunity to learn something, grow. It's called evolution. But my childhood was not easy in that we had a closet upstairs with a lock on the inside of the door that my mother routinely, most nights, in fact, when I wrote my book, Keeping Secrets, I was stunned to realize that we spent more nights sleeping inside a locked closet than in our own bed. Now, would any sane person spend 5 minutes in a house like that? But you would if you were in the grips of that kind of dysfunction and that kind of sickness. And alcoholism is a terrible sickness that the whole family gets affected. I had unbelievably low self-esteem, although I didn't know it. I felt that I was stupid because I would go to school and I couldn't learn, and the nuns were always on my back of, why don't you do your homework, and what is wrong with you, and don't your parents make you? And I couldn't tell them, you don't know what went on last night. You don't know the violence that happens every night in our house. And so from that I was shaped. There are a couple of major incidents that really profoundly affected me later on as I delved into looking at who I am to understand who I am today. One was one night, it was just so terrible, that my mother rounded us, got us out of the closet, got us in the car, and to take us to a motel because it was too unsafe to live in that house that night. And I remember when we got to the hotel, it's hard to imagine this, but women weren't allowed to have credit cards at that time. And so she tried to take her 3 kids to the motel, and they wouldn't let her in because she didn't have a credit card. And here we all are in our pajamas, and we have a little bag with our school uniforms in them, and we come back to the house. And I remember my mother putting her head on the steering wheel. And as a little kid, you feel so powerless because there's nothing you can do, and you're scared too. That looms large when I think about my childhood. The other was when I was 16. I was going to my first prom, and I'd hardly dated at all because I didn't want to bring dates to the house because they'd have to meet my father, and I never knew what they were going to, get. It was always awful. We lived in a little small house, but it was really my first date, and I wanted to wear a dress, a pretty dress. And my mother had gone to Lux School of Design in San Francisco. And so we went to the theater district and we bought chiffon, a layer of pink chiffon, a layer of peach chiffon. It was so pretty. And then we got this sequined fabric that was pink and peach. I've always loved sequins. And that was the bodice, and it was the prettiest dress, just like we girls like. I still like dresses like that today, the little bodice and the flippy little skirt. And my father had been watching the two of us, so excited about making this, and he was getting the means as I got used to. And that night, the night before my prom, the dress was hanging on the door, and I was so excited, my first real date, and wearing this pretty dress, and I was it that night. Somebody was always it. Somebody was always the object of his rage, and all of a sudden, at 3 a.m, the bedroom door slams open, the overhead light goes on. That was before you needed clickers to turn on lights. And he comes at me. It's like a mad dog. You think you're going to the prom, huh? You think that you're going to be with all the boys. And he goes over to the dress, and he starts to rip it in pieces. And my mother comes running in. She goes, "What, are you crazy? Are you crazy?" And he takes her, and he punches her in the breast, and she falls to the floor. And I don't know if any of you have ever experienced seeing your mother be hit, and I'd seen it many times. I felt a white light of rage like I'd never in my life seen. And my tennis racket was there, and I picked up the tennis racket, and with all my might, I just brought it down on his head. And I knocked him to the ground, and blood started spurting out of his head. And there's just blood everywhere. It's just so crazy. And my mother, who is an enabler, because that's what a wife of an alcoholic or a spouse of an alcoholic does, starts screaming and call the emergency, and she drags him down the hall and drags him down through the living room and down the front steps, and now there's blood everywhere, and they drive off, and I'm like so crazy, and I start cleaning. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm out in front of my house, and I'm watering the front of the house, with a hose, trying to get rid of this craziness. And so the ongoing litany in my house, because alcoholics are bullies, and they bully you to keep you there because they know if you leave them that they can't manage on their own. And so the ongoing litany was, "You are stupid, you are hopeless, you are worthless, you are nothing, you are a big O." I had incorporated that into who I was. And I remember my brother Danny, after one of these nights, came to me, like a big brother, trying to make me feel better, and he said, "Before you were born, it wasn't always like this. We had good times and we had parties." Well, do you know what I heard? You mean my birth did this? So I feel, without knowing it, that I am responsible for everything that's gone wrong in the family. If I hadn't been born, we'd all be better off. This is my baggage. And so now I know I'm stupid, I know I'm hopeless, I know I'm worthless, I know I'm nothing, I know I'm a big O, but I also now know something else. I am crazy, because only a crazy person would hit their father on the head with a tennis racket. He came home that night. I went into my little closet, had a little window that I could look out on the street. I'm looking out on the street, and I see the car pull in, and I see my mother walking him up to the front porch. He's all wrapped in a bandage. I had given him a concussion and many stitches, and I felt terrible. But what I didn't really realize was that from this moment on, my father was afraid of me. I didn't know I had taken my power at that point, but it was the beginning of my taking my power. And so I had one great thing happen. When you live in an alcoholic home, everything revolves around the needs and feelings of the alcoholic. And the needs and feelings of the children are never addressed because you're not the most important. It's all about taking care, hiding the secret. That's why my first book was called Keeping Secrets. And but I got the lead in the high school musical. The fine arts departments, you never know where a kid's going to be saved. And I got not only the lead in the high school music, it was Guys and Dolls. And I was Adelaide. And who better to be Adelaide than me? And it was so, I never felt that good about myself. other than the two teachers who were always really sexually inappropriate with me, but that's a whole other story. But as a broken bird, I didn't even see that their advances were anything other than my fault. I must have done something to provoke this. And the night of the closing night of the high school musical, a wonderful thing happened. Wonderful. I don't know how it happened. It's almost like, how could it have happened? A little small town. And remember Walter Winchell? Walter Winchell heard about this musical and came. And at the end of the musical, he walks up on stage, got a trench coat on and that famous hat that he used to wear, and he walks right to me, and he says, "You're going someplace, sister." I had never had anybody affirm anything good about me, and I held on to that. I'm going someplace. I'm going someplace. I was on the front page of the little Bugle or whatever it was in San Bruno with me and Walter Winchell. It was the most incredible thing. And I got a scholarship to college because of that, at a time when women didn't routinely go to college. I had sex that summer for the first time, if you can call it that backseat thing we used to do. That was fun. Nothing like backseat sex. And got pregnant. So now I'm going someplace, sister. I don't realize I'm pregnant until 2 or 3 months into my first year of college, and it's a Catholic college. Why I chose a Catholic college, I don't know. And trying to be a good girl. I was just trying to be a good girl. And it was very shameful, and I told I could no longer attend school, and so I left school and married somebody I didn't want to marry. Good guy. He had a good last name, Somers. I kept that. Suzanne Somers. The alliteration is great. And I did. Who at 18 wants a baby? But there's a miracle in birth, and in my whole story in this book is negatives are your opportunities. You don't welcome them, but when they come, just always look for, what am I supposed to learn from this? How am I supposed to grow spiritually and emotionally? And I left school, married him, gave birth, miracle of birth. Here's a baby I didn't want. And if you knew my son today, you'd go, how could you not have? But it shows you, thank God, maybe my Catholicism, I didn't believe in abortion. And they pulled him from my little girl body, and I looked at him, and I felt that love, that miracle of, that's the miracle of birth. It's not the birth canal. It's that moment when you look in this child's eyes. And I said out loud in the delivery room, I'm going to make a good life for you. Out loud, 18. And I divorced my husband at 19 and started this life. And at 20, I met Alan Hamel. It was like those movies. The movies I loved growing up were with Gene Kelly and Natalie Wood, where they sing A Very Special Love. What's that? Do you remember the name of that movie? You all know it. You saw it. And then there's the other one with Deborah Kerr and Cary Grant, and Affair to Remember. See, yeah, I mean, those movies, I just always dreamed of romance like that. And was it even possible to have romance like that? And I had no way to make a living. I wasn't qualified for anything. I tried making children's dresses because I knew how to sew, and I would make these beautiful little dresses and bring them to children's shop, but I'd have to sell them for $50, and that's about what my costs were. I mean, it wasn't really a very good business. And then I can cook. I always knew how to cook, so I started making chocolate mousse pies and selling them to the restaurants, which they took, which I probably shouldn't have because of the Board of Health and all that, but it was a different time. But they'd have to sell them for $3.50 a slice, and that was kind of high at that time, and my expenses, and that didn't work out so well. I was an Avon lady, a pathetic Avon lady that I got with a modeling agency. Maybe I could work there, and I remember one of my most illustrious jobs was dressing up as a squirrel. and passing out nuts for the American Walnut Association on Market Street in San Francisco. There I am with my big tail going, on a nut. But this day I walk into ABC television in San Francisco. KGO was the call name of it. And there he was. And there I'd never seen anyone like him. I'd never seen anyone dressed like that. He had a red alpaca sweater on and bell-bottom pants. I'd never seen that. And all these people were standing around him because he was the star of the show. And he had been the Johnny Carson of Canada, or as Alan Hamel says, Johnny Carson was the Alan Hamel of America. He had the most popular late-night show in Canada, and he had the aura of a guy who had success. And someone like me, I never ever imagined I could be with someone like him. And he caught my eye, and I was standing, if he was over here, I was kind of standing over there. I didn't want to go into that energy field. I didn't want to approach him, and he came over to me. And as he's walking towards me, it was like in An Affair to Remember, or those great movies where it all was like underwater. I heard nothing. I heard these sounds like it's underwater, and he comes to me, and I thought, I don't know what I'm going to say, and he says, "Can you get me a cup of coffee?" Great, Al. Oh, sure. So now, I don't know, I've never been in a television studio before. Where do I get a cup of coffee? So where do you get a cup of coffee? I asked someone. They go, on the third floor, a cafeteria. I go up there, it's a vending machine. Oh, God, it's 50 cents. I dig through my purse. I don't know if I have it. And I find 50 cents, which I really needed, but I put it in. I go down to the floor where he was again. He already had a cup of coffee. Somebody got it from the craft table over there. So you would think that wouldn't be a good beginning. I didn't care. I just never seen anyone like that. And at the end of that show, I was a prize model for the day. I was the one who was the Vanna White. And I was told by my agency, it's a one-day gig. If you do good, maybe it'll work into something permanent. I was so terrible. If here's the camera, I'd be looking over here, and then I'd go. It's like a Lucy comedy thing. So at the end of the show, they said, you don't need to come back. And I was mortified. And I go home, and I'm thinking about him that night, but he's out of reach of Siberia. And the next day, the phone rings, but I don't hear it. My little boy answers, and they're literal, is your mommy home? Uh-huh. He puts the phone down and goes back to play. So I walk by, see the phone dangling there. I pick it up. I'm about to hang it up. He goes, whoa, wait a minute. And I heard that voice. And that began this love affair. I went to his hotel that night. I know. And I slept with him that night. He gave me a pop brownie, not Bill Cosby like. He told me it was a pop brownie before he gave it to me. He had cracked crab laid out on the tatami mat on the floor, which was the bed. I walked in there. I was wearing bell-bottom pants and my high shoes because it was the 60s, and when he opened the door, he said, it's a Japanese suite. You have to take your shoes off in a Japanese suite. And I said, what else do you have to take off? Anyway, a pop brownie makes you laugh a lot. Everything he said was funny. The sake that he heated in the bathroom sink in hot water was funny, and the cracked crab on the floor was funny, and that whole evening was just the greatest, and that began this great love affair. He was not ready for a relationship. He lived in Los Angeles, and he was up in San Francisco 3 days a week, so I guess he might have been thinking. He said he fell in lust. I fell in love. He fell in lust, but he said that that he was never getting married again. He announced that like on the third date. And I thought, okay, all right, we got the rules laid out, and I was going to take him any way that I could. Now, what else is going on during this time because of why did I tell you about the gruesome parts of my childhood? Because it was my opportunity. I didn't know it. I now, all these years later, I see, and I'm sure everybody in this room has experienced this, these bad things, these negative things that happen to us. If you use it right, like judo, make forward energy to win, that's your evolution. That's how you learn. And so at 5 years old, my little boy got a gift for Christmas, a scooter board. Remember, Flexies, they called them? I didn't like it, but the person who gave it to him was excited about it. And he said to me, my little boy, "Can I go outside and play with this?" And I was just getting ready to take a bath, because when you're not working, you take a bath in the afternoon. And stupidly, because I remember I said, I'm going to make a good life for you. All right, just play in the driveway. Don't go anywhere else, okay? And I'm just getting into the bathtub. I'm young. Forgive me. I'm young that I would have let him be out there by himself at 5 years old. He lost control of it, shot out on the hill. The car came over, ran over him. I hear my front door a pounding. I know something terrible is wrong. I go to the window, second floor window, and I look out and I see him lying in the middle of the cul-de-sac, and blood is everywhere. Once again, blood is everywhere. And I felt this crazy thing. I ran down, I put my robe on, I ran down, I pick him up with my robe, and he says, "Mommy," and then he passed out, or I prayed he passed out. And somehow an ambulance got there. We get to the hospital, they said he has a 50-50 chance to live. If anyone's ever lost a child or been close to losing a child, you would do anything. You would give your life. You would do anything. And I wanted to trade my life for his, but there's nothing I could do. I was helpless. And I sat there all night, barefoot, with blood all over me. And in the morning, when he was out of surgery, he said, he's going to live. You're going to have to really watch him. He can't get excited. And so I said, I'll do anything for him. So why could that, how could that ever be a good thing? Because in the year that he was recovering, and I had tons of doctor bills now. I had no money, doctor bills. It was $20,000 to get him out of the hospital, which by today's standards cheap. But, when they said, how do you want to pay for this, a check or a credit card? You wouldn't want my check. And I don't have a credit card. And they let you out, by the way. But then they send bill collectors after you, and the phone's always ringing, people knocking at the door. I felt despair. It's different from depression. Depression wasn't who I was. It was just despair. I was so overwhelmed. I had no family support because they were all still dealing with the alcoholic, my father, but now my sister was an alcoholic, and my brother was an alcoholic, and my younger brother was an alcoholic and a drug addict. My family was just, and putting on a happy face to the community like we always did. We'd come out of the house of horrors and act like everything was okay. And so why would this be a good thing? Because he had nightmares, such terrible nightmares. And I'd go into his little room and I'd hold him and I'd rock him, and I just couldn't do anything for him. And I heard about the Community Mental Health Center, where they charge you according to your ability to pay. So I took him over there for him. And so she said, in order to work with him, I need to work with you. And I said, of course, I'll do anything for him. And so a year into it, she says to me, he's okay. He's not having the nightmares anymore. He feels safe. He feels loved. You've been a good mother. That was probably the second greatest thing anyone ever said to me. And she said, so he doesn't need to come anymore. I'd like you to stay. I said, me? Why? She said, you have the lowest self-esteem of anyone I've ever met. Ever met? How long you been in business? And she started working with me. And in the first year, she'd make me write a list. What do you like about yourself on one side? What don't you like about yourself on the other side? First year, I just couldn't think of one thing I like about myself. I said I like my hair. I like my hair. I had nice hair. That's Dennis Washington's phone. He probably just bought a boat. These took me 2 years to have the aha moment. But I was getting better along the way. I was starting to feel better about myself. And she kept saying the same thing over to me. Where did you get the feeling you were worth so little? I don't know. I just always felt I was a loser and I was stupid in school, etc. One day, she says again, when did you get the feeling you were worth so little? And I said, I don't know. I just always thought that I was stupid and hopeless and worthless and nothing and a big O. And she said, "Who told you that?" Now, you would think that this would have been an easy connection to make, but when you are in this place of low self-esteem, you can't see, you only see. I'm the one who wrecked the family, remember? My birth caused all this. And that's when I had my aha moment, life-changing moment. And then we really got to work. I was starting to be able to fill in things on what I like about myself. I have a nice personality I put down after I liked my hair. That was a beginning. And this woman reparented me. This woman saved my life. And I think sometimes about all the potential is lost in abusive homes. All the potential, how many doctors and scientists and leaders and writers and actresses and great mothers, and how much of that is lost because a kid doesn't get caught by the system. That's why Alan and I are so involved in Safe House here, because if there had been a safe house when I was a kid, instead of that motel that night, we could have called the police and they would have taken us to the safe house with good food and a warm bed and counselors. So these places that we raise money for here change lives. So now, 3 things happened to me in 1973 that changed my life. I wrote a book of poetry, because I always wrote everything. Hiding in the closet, I would write. I always wrote. I'm Irish. We write, and we drink. It's all fun. And so I wrote this book of poetry called Keeping Secrets. Somehow I got this published. But I was with Alan Hamel. I wasn't with him. He was still living in L.A., but he, pointed me to the right. You should go to his publisher. And he encouraged me. He'd say, "That's good." He introduced me to Jacqueline Suzanne on one of his shows, and I told her about my poetry, and she read them, and she said, "This is good. You've got some talent." Another kind of self-affirming thing. And I also got a part in a movie called American Graffiti as the mysterious blonde in the Thunderbird. Wasn't a big part. It was one night's work. That's okay. $136.72, which I needed. But I never even had the money to go see the movie. I hadn't seen the movie. But I had a credit now. I wrote a book of poetry, and on the back flap, I had a credit. And then the third thing that happened was I read about a part in a series called Lots of Luck. They're looking for a guest starring part for someone to play a small-town girl who doesn't know who she is and doesn't know what she looks like. And I thought, that's me. And it was really an excuse to go see Alan. Anytime I could be with Alan, steal a night with him here or there, was just this incredible experience. I just longed to be with him. I wanted to be with him so badly. So I said to him, not knowing how it works, I got an audition. He's all good. I said, "It's NBC tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Okay, so he drives me over. And, when you don't know anything, you don't know anything. And the guard says, "Why are you here?" "For the Dom DeLuise show." "Oh, then go park over there." And I walk in, and I don't know the ropes either. And I see these other girls who look like me, and they walk in, and they sign a thing, and then they get handed a script. So I sign the thing, they hand me the script, and I read it, and I get called in. And when I finished, Sam Denoff, who I came to know later on, he's a great producer, he said, "Very nice." And I thought, I know. I'm a small-town girl. I don't know who I am, and I don't know what I look like. So, yeah, of course I'm good at this. So now he says, "I'm going to give you a call back." I said, "Great." So I go out to the receptionist, and I said, "I have a call back." And she said, "Oh, that's great." And I said, "What is that?" She said, they're going to call you back." "Oh, wow, when?" "Well, today, probably." "Oh, well, where do I go?" Now I'm her problem. She's irritated. She goes, "I don't know. The words that changed my life are about to be said to me. I don't know. Why don't you go wait in the commissary?" So I go sit in the commissary. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm all alone. And in walks Johnny Carson. And Johnny Carson, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, there's Johnny Carson. There's Johnny Carson. Oh my God, Johnny Carson. I think he's walking over to me. Oh my God. And right in front of me is Johnny Carson. He says, "Hey, little lady, what are you doing here?" And I said, "I have a call back," because now I have lingo, right? And he says, "Well, that's good." And I said, "Dom DeLuise, oh, he's a friend of mine. I'll help you get it." So I didn't want to waste the opportunity, so I had my little book of poetry. So I just handed him the book of poetry. That was Wednesday. And Friday night of that week, I made my national television debut. And I wrote a bad check for my dress, still crisis-oriented, $75. Imagine what a dress it was. But you know, when you're that young, anything looks good on you. I had one shoulder. I still like that look. And I'm standing behind that famous curtain, hoping I'm not the first person to throw up on the Tonight Show. But I'm thinking, oh my God, they must just love my poetry. My poetry must be so good. And I hear Johnny say, "We've all been wondering who the mysterious blonde in the Thunderbird is." And I'm thinking, "You were?" And he said, "Well, we found her." And they opened the curtain, and the audience goes, "Woo!" Now remember, I hadn't seen the movie. So I sit down, and Johnny Carson says to me, when'd you get to town? I said, "Today." I'm literal. And he liked me. Because remember how I used to like the unpolished people? He is from a small town too. And he started having me on every month. And my little book of poetry became the best-selling book of poetry in America that year, along with Rod McEwen. Now, the circuitous route to the success that I achieved never would have happened had it not been for all these events that happened up till now. I married Alan Hamel after this incredible affair. It was very hard. We're blending families, which that was a new, uncharted area at that time. Very difficult. There's no kid who wants a new parent, and ours didn't want new parents either. And one of those many times that I was on The Tonight Show, Fred Silverman, who was then the president of ABC, they were looking for a girl on the show called Three's Company, and they had tried to, they didn't test well. He said, "I got the girl. I see her on The Tonight Show with Carson all the time." And that's how I ended up on Three's Company. I arrive at Three's Company with all these professionals. I'm just so still naive, and I go, "I haven't had any training, but I had the lead in Guys and Dolls in high school." And this professional group looks at me like, have you ever walked into a room full of cats? Like, are you kidding me? By the time you get here, you're supposed to know what you're doing. But anyway, one of the producers took me under his wing, the way Nadia Comaneci had a coach who, every time she'd do a flip, she'd look at him and he'd either go like this or like that or like that. He took me under his wing like Professor Henry Higgins with Eliza Doolittle. And it took me a year. If you watch Three's Company, I don't know what I'm doing the first year, but by second year, I heard the music of comedy. It's musical. It's set up, beat. Oh my God, I'm musical. I get it. And I'm working with John Ritter every day. I didn't realize in this time that my mentor was my coach, that he had fallen in love with me. I never knew it, in the way that a father might desire his daughter but knows it's wrong. So there was it was proprietary. I made you. It was proprietary. So when I married Alan Hamel, he really got angry. And you're stupid, and he's the wrong person for you, and you're making a big mistake, and this is wrong, and you're going to ruin your career because if you're married now, you're not interesting to the males in America. It's doing all this stuff, and I'm going, I don't care. Alan Hamel means more to me than any television show, even this one that's the #1 show in America. So I signed on for nothing, $3,500 a week when I signed on for Three's Company. By year 6, I had been featured on 60 Minutes, the cover of Newsweek. I really had major success. I'd worked with Sinatra, and I'd worked with Sammy Davis Jr., and I was the last one to work with John Wayne. I was doing my own specials and their specials, and all on the cuff. I'm teaching myself as I go along, but I'm a fast learner, and I know the good stuff. I've always known the good stuff. And it's year 6, and it's time for me to renegotiate my contract. And all the men in television were making 10 to 15 times more than me. And I was fine with that because when I signed on, I was just happy to have a job. But now things are different. And it wasn't feminism, really. I'd like to say I was out there, burning my bra. I'm not one of those women. It was, I'm selling as many or more tickets than any of you, and why are you getting 15 times more than me? So when we went in to renegotiate, we asked to be paid commensurate with the highest paid men in television that time, Carol O'Connor and Alan Alda and a few others. And Laverne and Shirley had negotiated shortly before, and it was Laverne and Shirley, and so you have to give them what they want because it's Laverne and Shirley, and without Laverne and Shirley, there's no Laverne and Shirley. So they got back end, they got everything. They had decided before Alan Hamel went into this negotiation that they were going to fire me, because if they could fire the woman with the highest demographics on television at that time, then all the other women would be afraid. So he left the house that morning. He said, this could all blow out of the water, because he had gotten a call the night before from somebody at the in the head office in New York. He said, you're not hearing this from me, but they're going to hang a nun in the marketplace, and it's going to be Suzanne. And so that's why he stopped and looked back at me. I said, no, it's a negotiation. You ask for this, they'll counter, we'll meet in the middle, and we'll come, it'll all be nice. So they didn't say she's fired. They said, we'll give her $5,000. Take it or leave it. The men are making what they're making. It's huge money at that time for that time. So I was essentially fired that day, and Alan comes home. There's a way that the front door opens when it's good news. And there's a way that it opens when it's bad news. I lived in a multi-level beach house. The door creaks open, and I hear him plodding, going up the stairs. So I meet him at the landing, and he goes, you're out. I said, I'm out. He says, you're out. He said, it wasn't a negotiation, you're out. And then he did something, as he always does. He took me by the shoulders, and he said, look, it's gone. We're going to make this work for us. And that was the beginning of Two's Company. That is the reason I wrote this book. So, thank you. We decided we would never work for anyone ever again. The first thing he did was go to make a deal for me in Las Vegas, and at the MGM Grand. Went to every hotel. They turned him down at every hotel because he wanted a 2-year deal. They were only offering 2 weeks to television stars at that time. Bernie Rothkopf, who Alan said reminded him of one of his cranky uncles, he made the deal with Bernie, and I got a 2-year deal at the MGM Grand, and in 1987 I was named Las Vegas Female Entertainer of the Year, along with Frank Sinatra, who was Male Entertainer of the Year. So that went well. The next thing Alan brought me was the Thigh Master. And I said, are you kidding? I'm from prime time and I'm a big headliner. He goes, And so we met with the inventor, and the inventor was making it for the upper body. It was called a V toner, to make your body like a V. And I said, is it good for the inner thighs? And he said, well, yeah, but everybody's interested in the upper body. I said, not women. We're into our thighs. Well, we sold 10 million of those, based on a pair of very expensive shoes that I bought, Manolo Blahniks, that at that time were $565. That's like $2,000 now. And I was standing in my dressing room in my underwear, and I put on the shoes, and I thought, oh, Alan's going to just think I'm so stupid for paying so much money for a pair of shoes. So I walk out in my bra and underpants, and I said, like my shoes? He said, great legs. And I went, oh. That's the commercial. So we're able to write off the shoes, and the camera panned up my legs with Alan off camera saying great legs. And that's the way Alan and I have worked together all these years. And we don't fight. We get along great. I've got the romance that I wanted, that I saw with Deborah Kerr and Cary Grant, and the other thing that when Gene Kelly sang, Marjorie Morningstar was the movie, A Very Special Love. Remember that? And I think that's what's missing in today with kids. I was talking to a 16-year-old girl recently, and I said, so what's hooking up? She says, you go out with a pack of guys, and you meet up with a pack of boys, and then a guy comes up to you and says, you want to hook up? And then you go into a room with them, and he gets to feel your boobs. And I went, wow, that's romantic. So that's another reason I wrote Two's Company, is that it's 50 years now, and it's a great love. It's a sexy love. It's exciting. We zig and zag together. We're business partners. It's a figure eight. It never begins. It never ends. It's the greatest thing in my life. Do you know what a shmoo is? A shmoo, my brother Danny was given a shmoo when he was 8 years old for Christmas. It's a life-size punching bag. It's got a clown face, and on the bottom there's sand. You punch it, it bounces back up. hit it again, bam, bounces back up. Doesn't matter how many times you punch it, it all bounces back up all the time. I look at my life, our life, as we're schmooze. You know, your house burns down, what are you going to do? Something you can learn from it? Yeah. Our house burns down, and I learned about letting go of attachment. By the way, if somebody's house burns down, don't say to them it's just stuff. It pisses you off. Because you want to say, well, then go burn all your stuff. You have to come to it on your own. It's just stuff. And you do. You get cancer. Okay, there's a lot of us in this room who have or got cancer. You have to find the good in that disease. I found strength in this. I wrote a book about it. The book is called Knockout, Doctors Who Are Cancer Without Drugs. That's the way that I chose to go for a large tumor. It was right for me. It was the right decision for me. The book has been the #1 book in China for the past 2 years, which is so great. All the doctors in that book are going, what's going on in China? I've got so many Chinese patients. Problem with China is you sell them your stuff and they go, thanks. They don't pay you. So it's nice that it's #1, but we're not making any money off of China. You get fired from the biggest show in television, the #1 show at that time. You make it work for you. You take all the problems in life and make them work for you. I don't know what's coming. I don't know what's down the line. I don't look forward. Is it enough? Can we stop? I don't know. But as they come now, I've retrained myself to look for the good, to not ever focus on anger or resentment. I was able to find the good in my father. If it wasn't for him making it so tough, would I have had the resilience in life? I forgive him because it had to be so hard to be in his dark soul and live with knowing what he did night after night to his family. That he allowed me to write the book about him. That he allowed me to tell our story on Donahue, which he was so darling. Phil Donahue has us all lined up, and he says to my dad, well, meet the Mahoneys. They've had one heck of a drinking problem. And he comes to my dad, and he says, so your name being Mahoney might have something to do with your drinking problem. He goes, yeah, and my grandmother's name was Donahue. I hope I got my humor from him. So it's all an opportunity. You know, there's this beautiful quote that I always say at the end of my show in Las Vegas. It doesn't seem very Vegas-y, but I believe that we are mind, body, and spirit. It's by Lao Tzu. If you are depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. And if you are at peace, you're living in the present. I'm at peace. I am at peace with everything that's happened. I'm living a life I never dreamed possible. I wake up every morning so grateful to sleep with this beautiful man who is the love of my life, who adores me. I love my family. I love my work. I'm in great health. I love the food I get to eat. And I believe that if you live in gratitude, it leaves a little room for anything else in life. So I start out happy every day, and it's not fake. It's how I really feel. My first therapist said to me when she told me not to come anymore after 3 years, and I felt so, how can you let me go? I've been coming, I've been paying my $1 a week. She said, just know this, the worst is over. And the worst is over. It will never be that way again. It's not who you are. It's not what you do. It's not what you have in life. It's only about who you love and who loves you. And I have great love. I'd like to show you something. Eddie, if you would run that.
I peer through windows, watch life go by, dream of tomorrow and wonder why the past is holding me, keeping life at bay. I wander lost in yesterday, wanting to fly, but scared to try. someone like me, then suddenly nothing would ever be the same. My heart would take wing, and I'd feel so alive if someone like you found me. So many secrets I've longed to share. All I have needed is someone there to help me see a world I've never seen before. I love to open every door to set me free, so I can soar. If someone like you found someone like me, then suddenly nothing would ever be the same. There'd be a new way to live, a new life to love. If someone like you found me, oh, if someone like you found someone like me, and suddenly nothing would ever be the same. My heart would take wing, and I'd feel so alive if someone like you loved me. Loved me. Loved me.
Thank you.